America stands on the site of insurrection, inauguration, and Coloradans watch history made before their eyes.
Every time we get a breath of fresh air, that it doesn't mean that the work is done.
The new administration's immigration plans would impact an enormous number in Colorado, though perhaps not the people we've come to know. The private sector businesses in charge of some of this state's vaccines are now asking the state for help, while our COVID hospitalization numbers did something funny again today. Your Word of Thanks campaign has dealt with some really serious issues. What do you say this week we do something fun? Don't just watch, let's do some good together, because this is next. Colorado's most overwhelming choice for president in a generation took the oath of office today. President Joe Biden pledged to work for everyone who voted for him and everyone who voted against him, while he condemned those who rose up against American democracy in a failed attempt to prevent his presidency. A few Coloradans who bragged about that now have mugshots and court dates to discuss it. Coloradans' eyes were also on Vice President Kamala Harris as she made history today, including our Anusha Roy.
Solemnly swear.
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear.
That I want to say, go, girl. Give them a show.
That I will bear true faith and
As the daughter of two immigrant parents, I've always struggled with a sense of identity because I identify as both Indian and American. And so for this, it really makes me feel that I can also take on a leadership role like never before. Like I can have influence as a female, as an Indian, as an American.
And like that was like such an out of the world like kind of thing to think, right? Like a woman of color like involved in politics, or like someone like me like being involved in politics when I'm older.
It's about time. We knew it was possible.
We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one.
And I think that this is going to start to impact a lot of the way that we teach our young boys and our young girls within our communities. I think it's going to motivate a lot of Muslims and Muslim women to speak up on any level.
How would you say this impacts your future?
Support in terms of medical background, support in terms of jobs and equity, support in terms of racial harmony.
I don't think that just because she's a woman of color, you know, many of the social or political issues we face will be resolved immediately.
The fact that, you know, we're still sitting here having this conversation, that a woman of color as the vice president is still happening, and that it's still like this big historical thing. I think that means that there's still so much more to do. And like I said, I think it's really important that we still continue to hold this administration, like this new administration, accountable for the things that they do and the people that they say that they represent.
So help me God.
So help me God.
So there is a perspective that kept surfacing today. It's one that the vice president has talked about herself, that Kamala Harris becoming vice president is historic, but it should not be the last time. Kyle, a lot of the women I talked to today said it has taken too long to get to this point and that it should become the norm.
You know, as somebody, Anusha, who watched the inauguration with a 2-year-old this morning, I wondered if by the time she's old enough to be politically aware, whether this will be a continuing conversation.
Yeah, and it is something I think a lot of families, myself included with my niece, wondering the same thing. You know, I did want to point out one thing. The women I talked to, especially the ones interested in politics, said along with watching the vice president, they've also watched other women, minority women, being elected at a national level. They watched it locally here in Colorado, and every time it happened, they felt like it was opening the door a little bit more for them. It also made them even more dedicated to making sure that there's more representation in this state.
Without question. I'm so glad that you used some clips of Amanda Gorman's poem, too. She was unbelievable. I mean, yeah. I stood up when she was talking because it just seemed like the respectful thing to do when you're like in the presence of that kind of genius.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. All right. Thank you, Anusha. Appreciate it. President Biden's inaugural address included a defense of the truth It ought to be echoed by every American, whether or not they supported him. Because the truth does not belong to President Joe Biden. It does not belong to Democrats or to anyone else. The truth has got to be the foundation for where we go from here. A bedrock of truth can bear the weight of all kinds of disagreements. Republicans, Democrats, everybody in between and on the outside need that truth as our starting place for debate. Because lies and conspiracy theories are not harmless. We've seen that. They ruin lives. They tear apart families and friends. Lies get people killed. Living in a shared reality means shouldering life's disappointments along with its successes. Because the cheap consolation and comfort found in conspiracy theories is always short-lived. That's why everyone has to be more outrageous than the last. Those conspiracy theories and lies eat away at our chance to debate our differences from that shared foundation of facts. There's truth and there are lies, President Biden said today. Defend the truth, defeat the lies. Every American should join that effort. If we love this country, it's our only chance. State of Colorado is going to have to step in to speed up vaccinations at long-term care facilities. That was priority number one, you'll remember. The feds put CVS and Walgreens in charge of that effort, but now one of those chains is asking the state for help to get the job done on time. The general running Colorado's process told our Steve Steger how it's going to work.
Let's start with where we stand. According to the latest data from CVS and Walgreens, 45,800 doses of the vaccine have been administered to residents and staff at long-term care facilities. That's 37% of the estimated 120,900 residents and staff in those facilities across the state. All of this is being done through those two pharmacies as part of a federal contract. The state has asked them to deliver first doses to all 1,100 plus facilities in Colorado by the end of the month. With state data showing 217 of them still unscheduled, the state will have to take over some to accomplish that goal.
Looking at next week's schedule, we said, hey, kind of looking like you got some facilities that aren't scheduled.
Brigadier General Scott Sherman, who is in charge of the state's vaccine distribution, told me CVS has asked the state to take over clinics for 30 facilities, and Colorado will also handle clinics for 11 facilities that didn't sign up with a pharmacy. Governor Polis told us the state should have been in charge of this since the beginning.
We could have done it faster as a state, there's no question. If we had taken this on from the get-go and the federal government hadn't taken that over through a contract, we would have been done by now.
The man he put in charge of vaccines here has a bit more faith in the pharmacies, though he would have liked a bit more coordination.
I'd give it probably a B+, high 80s. Maybe the state could have contracted with a lot of the pharmacy organizations in the state. They could have federally maybe given us some money to do that and done our own contract to make sure that there's more input from the local level.
For Next, I'm Steve Steger.
Another concern is long-term care staff refusing the vaccines. The state doesn't have accurate tracking on vaccine refusal, but the anecdotal reports the state is receiving suggest that half of long-term care employees have refused. Well, we've hit the 5% vaccination stage statewide, 5.1%. About 8,600 people got a shot yesterday. We're close to almost 300,000 Coloradans total. Colorado's impressive drop in hospitalizations stalled out there for a while. Then it plunged, as we told you yesterday, and now it's jumped back up by 17 patients to 744 people. We're going to keep an eye on this and hope that we're able to return to sustained declines. You all have raised $2.6 million for nonprofit causes in Colorado through your Word of Thanks campaign. You've helped with some really serious issues. Some of them were literally life or death for the people that you've helped. What if this week we just did something that's pure fun? Here's what I'm thinking. This week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign can change one small town in Colorado for the better. They literally do not have enough people there to do this alone, and that's where we come in. Branson, Colorado. It's a map dot in the southeast part of the state. And they were so thrilled that that town could finally field a six-man football team for the first time in a long time. But their football field is carved out of old pasture land, and it is rough. Like so rough that even after Branson students tried to pick out every rock and every cactus, tried to nurture every blade of grass, that field is still a hard and dusty mess. It is such a sad situation that Branson's opponents will not play football there for fear of getting hurt. So Branson, tiny Branson, Colorado, with its population of less than 100 people, is trying to raise money to install an artificial turf football field. And it's more than just a field. They see this as a chance to build a place for their small community to gather, a place of pride. They have raised quite a bit of money from their small community, and just this week the school board gave them the go-ahead to go and look for outside grants and outside sponsors, anything to keep their dream of a community field alive. Well, luckily, I know a few 100,000 Coloradans who are extremely generous. So what do you say? You want to build a football field for Branson, Colorado? Text thanks to 303-871-1491, and I'll send you the link to donate. Or you can just search online for Next Word of Thanks. I will match the first 50 of you who want to put up $5 towards Branson's field. So I'm picturing us driving down south, detouring through that southernmost town in Colorado someday, and seeing that community gathered around a beautiful field carved out of the plains. And all of us would be able to say, we helped build that.
I'm just tired living in this situation, for 4 years in country.
The new administration is trying to move quickly to change immigration policy. It may not change much for the best-known faces of that issue in Colorado. Next. $190,000 Coloradans, group about the size of the population of Fort Collins, could be allowed to stay here legally if President Biden succeeds in one of his first moves. He wants Democrats in Congress to send him a bill quickly with an 8-year path to citizenship for people here illegally. Our Marshall Zellinger explains why Colorado's most vocal voices on immigration may not get that help.
The cases the immigration continues same, no change, nothing.
Jeanette Vizguera is approaching 2 years living in a Denver church, facing deportation for using a fake Social Security number to be able to work. Her situation won't change, even with an immigration bill President Biden wants Congress to consider, which would provide an 8-year path to citizenship for those without documentation. That includes upwards of 190,000 in Colorado.
Mi nombre es Jeanette Vizguera.
Last week, Vizguera risked getting taken into custody when she traveled to Delaware to deliver a letter and message to President Biden's transition headquarters, asking for a moratorium on all deportations.
I spoke direct the person, the office, the Biden, explained and everything, mentioned TPS, DACA, and whatever, but not mention the people in sanctuary. The people in sanctuary same need one solution for this and go in Delaware.
I don't think that a lot of people who are in sanctuary are necessarily going to be able to walk out the front doors of the church and feel safe today.
Hans Meyer has defended Vizguera. He specializes in immigration law.
That, I think, would be premature to think that the folks who are in sanctuary right now could trust that they could leave sanctuary and trust that they wouldn't have enforcement actions taken against them.
I'm just tired living in this situation, for 4 years in sanctuary.
Ingrid Encalada Latour also risked arrest, just like Vizguera, when she attended a rally in Denver last week. Latour spent the length of the Trump administration living in a Boulder church. She's in sanctuary because she was convicted of stealing a Social Security number. She said she bought one to work and didn't know it might belong to someone else. Though Governor Jared Polis pardoned her in 2019, he has no power over her citizenship status.
No, I can not available to just go back to my house because it's a process about immigration, so it's going to take a little bit more time.
The cases for both Latour and Vizguera have their own details, so it's not really a one-size-fits-all solution, but with that letter that Vizguera hand-delivered to the president's transition team, she wants him to tell the Department of Homeland Security it's a one-size-fits-all solution. Just stop all and let everyone who's in a church right now walk safely without concern out of those churches.
One of a number of issues that are going to move fast, and we'll keep an eye on all of them. Marshall, thank you. Some folks are not going to like what I have to say when we get back, but the man deserves a certain amount of respect as he leaves the national spotlight today. That's next. A brief word now about what we saw this morning. Today, America says goodbye to a man who whined and complained about every little thing that did not go his way. A man who constantly ran his mouth at his opponents. Goodbye, Phillip Rivers. You were a really fun competitor to watch. We wish you the very best in your retirement from the NFL.
Windy and warm today, the warmest day of the week with temperatures near 60 degrees. Not much moisture from a front that stayed basically north of the metro area. Gusty winds this afternoon did bring temperatures above average, and those winds will slowly decrease tonight. High wind warnings have canceled out, but still some gusts to 40 and 50 miles per hour above 7,000 feet. By the wee hours of the morning, we should be a whole lot calmer. Overnight, fair skies, light winds, and a low of 29. Tomorrow, sunny and cooler. Cooling trend continues through Friday with a 20% chance of snow on Saturday. Not overly impressed with this weekend storm, but maybe a couple inches in the mountains. And then another weak system that rolls through with another chance for snow on Tuesday.
Late last night, President Joe Biden's predecessor gave a pardon to the son of a powerful Coloradan. And he stiffed a Coloradan indicted in connection with his border wall. The former chief strategist, Steve Bannon, was pardoned as he stands accused of scamming the former president's own supporters out of money to privately fund the border wall with Mexico. Bannon's alleged accomplice in the scheme, a man named Tim Shea of Castle Rock, did not get a pardon. An ex-hedge fund manager did get a presidential pardon right before the past president left office. Bo Brownstein was convicted of insider trading in 2012. He's the son of Colorado's most powerful and best-connected lobbyist, Norm Brownstein. So I was really nervous about this week's Word of Thanks campaign. I want to share with you why, and why I decided to go ahead with it anyway. Next. So we're building a football field tonight. Our first Word of Thanks campaign that I think is just pure fun. Tiny town of Branson in Los Animas County has a 6-man football team, but their field is carved out of such rough ground and with such little water available in town that it is brown and hard as a rock, and opponents won't play there for fear of getting hurt. So let's help the school district put in an artificial turf field that will become a gathering place for that entire community. Text the word thanks to 303-871-1491. I'll send you the link to join me in giving to this. I'll be honest, I was nervous to share this idea because I'm guessing some of you probably think that it's trivial. We've dealt with a lot of really serious causes on Word of Thanks, but all of us who grew up in places, rural or urban, that couldn't afford a safe spot for kids to play sports, or places that lacked a community gathering spot, I think we at least know what a difference this is going to make. Darren wrote in tonight, said, I grew up in a super small town, so I know how important the school is to the community. I couldn't just donate $5. So funny story, Darren. I grew up in a small town so fancy that we had grass tennis courts. And by that, I mean the court was so old and so cracked apart that there was grass growing up through it. We just pull it out with our hands, and if the ball landed there, it bounced all kind of different wild ways. Tyler didn't like the election commentary tonight, said, I hope God has mercy on your soul. He spelled it S-O-L-E, so I'll keep an eye on this. See you next time.